We're going to talk about work. Every successful person's favorite topic, and that thing that the rest of us feel compelled to do. So, Jim Rohn taught us that you get paid for value that you bring to the marketplace. You don't get paid for difficulty. You don't get paid quantitatively for effort. You don't get paid for energy. You don't get paid for time. There is no one-to-one ratio that is a firm predictor of income based on human activity. So the abstract concept of value, as taught by Jim Rohn, is profoundly correct. You get paid for value. The reason that a product costs more in one place than another, if it's the same product, is because of an increase in value. It's in a different situation. The market is crude, man. The market is crude. The market sets a price based on how much people are willing to pay for that item. And that's normally defined by how much people do pay for that item, which is an indicator of how much they can pay for that item, which is an indicator of how much they value that item. Now, value is the dominant principle. You get paid for value. Now, some people will argue, well, that's not completely true, because a lot of people make a lot of money and they don't provide a whole lot of value. And I would argue that the value that those people provide, they're probably not providing it themselves. They're probably providing that value by way of leverage, right? It's kind of like when you're playing chess. There's the value of the pieces. You know, when I start off, my knight is worth 3 and my bishop is worth 3, and you know, some people have an argument of whether or not one of them is worth 3.5 based on their preference or their range or what have you. But the rook starts off at a value of 5, and the queen starts off at a value of 9. The king starts off at a value of 10, just for mathematical purposes, but the king is invaluable. Meaning, a threat to the king is the most, important thing, because the end of the king is the end of the game. Those are the value of the pieces when you start. But if I push a pawn to the other side of the board, the value of that pawn increases as it steps across. So yeah, it's a 1-point piece, but if it's a 1-point piece at the back rank, or if it's a 1-point piece that's checking their king, or if it's a 1-point piece that's getting promoted to a queen, the value of that piece, maybe not mathematically, but certainly circumstantially and situationally increases. Like a bishop that's on its original square and a bishop that is controlling, an entire X of diagonals of his maximum amount of squares, and in one of those squares he's checking a king. The do-nothing bishop is just sitting there worth 3 points. The same piece in a different position is much more valuable. Much more valuable. You look at a human hand. You got a guy who works by, you got a guy who works over the phone. He breaks his left hand. Big deal, right? He's gonna get a headset. He's gonna work the phone with his right hand. He's gonna alternate between writing and using the phone, whatever. Not that big of a problem. You got a guy with the physically same human hand. He breaks his hand, but this guy is a pianist. This guy plays piano for a living. Whose hand is more valuable? The hand that is required to sustain his livelihood, or the hand that just makes doing things easier? So value is the dominant principle. Another way to think about value is usefulness. How useful is this, and how many people is it useful to? So when you look at people in companies and corporations who make a lot of money and don't do that much work, understand that they're sitting at a different position. Their position has leverage. Their pawn is closer to the back row. So the moves that they make, albeit not even as big a move for them, they're sitting at such a point of leverage that their decision affects the behavior of thousands of people. That is where the value comes from. The value comes from the leverage to create activity at scale. So the principle of value is definitely true, and there's no way around it. But I want to take that to the next level. I want to finish that thought. So you're saying, okay, how can I become more valuable? There's a simple way to become more valuable, and that's acquiring more skills. But I'm not going to talk about that because that's personal development in a nutshell. I do want to talk about the types of work. And the value that you can create in these three ways is a multiplier in terms of your value to the world. Okay, so there's three types of work. There's doing work, which is basically just activities. Picking up trash, low levels of engagement, maybe high efforts of output, stuff along those lines. And then there's thinking work, which is the next step up in the three-tier hierarchy of work values. There's thinking work. Now you got people who are getting paid for what they know. These are going to be your intellects, your knowledge workers, right? The people whose job require a technical savvy. All work is technical, but some is more nuanced and detailed than others. So there's thinking work. And then at the highest level of work is feeling work. These are people who create feelings. The reason why entertainers are the richest among us isn't because of the effort or the value of what they do. Because let's just be honest, a song is not a useful thing. I can't feed my kids a song. I can't fix anything with music. But what it does is it creates feelings. The people who are among us who are talented, the ones who create feelings, that is the most valuable of all work. Because those three levels of human engagement are the hierarchy of activity. Feeling is dominant. We're emotional creatures more than anything else. And then like at level 2, we have thinking work. People who have to focus and put their mind on something for a while, they start to separate themselves from the people who don't. And even a person of equal intelligence will know something that's different, right? The value of a competent person in one area is still valuable to a competent person of equal intelligence in another area because it's a different body of knowledge. A plumber, a highly skilled plumber, is a very valuable person, even if the customer is a highly skilled electrician. They're both thinking workers, but the value comes from him knowing something that you don't. And at the lowest level, the doing workers is just the activity-based work. That's most of your service industry, your waiters, your people who do not have to engage their mind a tremendous amount to do their job. People who could, physically move an item from here to there, factory workers and such. People who are more concerned with physical activity or any type of activity, to be honest, and just producing a result that doesn't require them to make decisions and doesn't require them to figure things out or to do any research. Those are the three types of work: feeling work, thinking work, and doing work. Now, although those are three separate types of work, they're not completely exclusive. Most jobs do require some of all three. Most jobs require you to create a feeling, most commonly by servicing a customer. They require you to do something, to bring a product to bear or bring a service to bear. And they do require you to think at least somewhat, to make decisions and stuff along those lines, or produce a product that requires your knowledge. So most jobs do have some of all three types of work, but in order to dramatically increase your value, go from a doing work job to a thinking work job. You want to increase your value again? Go from a thinking work job to a feelings work job. Why are actors paid so much? They're paid that much to convey feelings. And then they gain a position of leverage, meaning they can apply that work at scale. Leonardo DiCaprio, doesn't have $100 million because he's that much smarter than anybody else. He's not. He has that much money because he creates that much emotion. Not necessarily in himself, but in the audience. Okay? So, my advice is to find a way to edge your way up that hierarchy of work. The doing work, you want to have some doing work. You don't want to be physically idle. You do want to produce something. The thinking work, you do want to do thinking work because technical specialties separate you and increase your value tremendously. And then feeling work, if you can do anything creative, or you can use work that has the ability to create emotions in people by expressing yourself or presenting something, and present that at scale, the sky's the limit. Three types of work. Now you know. Feeling work, thinking work, and at the bottom, just doing work.